Hello, fellow travelers. Solo Sue here, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about doing a side-to-side and back-to-back the way I did it. If you're not familiar with the series that has been playing, and now that we've reached the end of it, I thought this was a good time to talk about this, but I did a back-to-back on the Ruby Princess, both times going round trip San Francisco, and then the day I got off the Ruby Princess, I scheduled myself brilliantly for another cruise that left out of Long Beach. And if you're not familiar with California geography, they're about 400 miles apart. So yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking, and I did this to myself, so I consider myself having shot myself in the foot somewhat. So what happened is, looking at the timing of everything, I had scheduled my flight. I believe it left about 11 or 11:30. And of course, we got into port in between 7 and 8. And I think they were letting us off the ship about 8 o'clock or 8:30. Looking at the timing of everything, though, I was like, okay, I'm obviously going to have to walk my bags off the ship, because otherwise they weren't starting the luggage. People who didn't walk their luggage off, they weren't starting to put people's luggage out until too late for me. It would have been like, I think, 9 or something like that. So it's a 2-week trip. Had a fair amount of luggage. Actually, technically, it was a 3-week trip because the next week still had to happen. And so I had a fair amount of luggage, and I knew that it was going to be oh so much fun walking the luggage off. Now, I've got the 4-wheeled spinners, right? And they do help quite a bit. But if you have those, you know they don't like carpet very much. And so fighting with, I had 2 big suitcases and 2 carry-on things that were on top of the suitcases. And I'm trying to fight with those to get them off the ship, and that was just so much fun. But I did it. And once off the ship and through customs and everything, I walk off and I looked at the rideshare app I use and realized that they weren't going to have anybody available for taking me in a reasonable amount of time, because of course everybody else was also doing that. And so I decided, well, I looked over at the taxi line. Now, taxis tend to be a bit more expensive than rideshare apps, but at this point, I figured it was worth the extra money because there was no line at the taxi stand at all. And so I thought, well, I'll just go do that. And I was glad I did. It worked out very well. They got me to the airport in very good time. If you are trying to figure out how long it takes to get to the airport, if there isn't traffic, it's a good half hour. If there is traffic, it can be quite a bit more depending on the traffic. If you're not familiar with it, San Francisco Airport, which is where I was going in and out, is actually south of San Francisco, about half an hour or so. So anyway, they got me there. Alaska was not having delays despite the summer of flight delays, so I was very glad to see that. And I was able to, I think I was in LA landing around 1 o'clock, because it's not that long a flight. I was going to LAX, not Long Beach, just because at the time, the timing for when the flights were, Long Beach is a much smaller airport than Los Angeles is. And so I was able to get a flight at the right time going through LAX. And I went down there to the rideshare area. They actually have a shuttle bus there in Los Angeles Airport that takes you to the rideshare and the taxi stands. They're all in the same area. And so I did that. Got to the ship probably by about 1:30. And so I did make it. It took me another hour and a half to get on the ship because the line was so long. This is kind of an indication of get on that ship earlier. But then the lines in Long Beach tend to be longer anyway, from what I can tell. Every time I go out of there, it seems it's a fairly long line. It doesn't process the people through as fast as some of the other ports do. I wanted to sort of talk about this because this was my first back-to-back and side-to-side all in one trip. And I would totally do the back-to-back again. That was awesome. I was able to book the same cabin, both voyages, so I didn't have to move all my stuff. Would I do flying the same day, cutting it so close again on a side-to-side? No, I would not. Not if there was any choice in the matter at all. That I would consider a mistake. It worked out okay, but it so easily could have gone sideways. Now, if I was going to do a side-to-side and it wasn't the same port, the only ones I would consider that I've been to anyway would be one Long Beach and San Pedro. Those two are both within like half an hour of each other, so you could easily, find transportation between them. Or on the East Coast, Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Both of those cruise ports, Everglades is Fort Lauderdale. Both of those are very close to each other. And so again, if I had one that was coming in on one of those and then the other that was going to the other pair, that would not be a concern for me, because you can always find enough transportation options that, you're getting into the port pretty early. And so you have a good amount of time to get over to the other port, right? And so I think that's probably the only feasible way I would consider doing something like that again. And I wouldn't recommend, I don't like flying the same day. I don't recommend it to people. And I've heard so many horror stories that it's just not worth it not to fly in the day before. So those are my advice for doing a back-to-back and side-to-side. And hopefully that helps somebody. Have you ever done one? Leave a comment below and let me know how it went. Solo Sue signing off.